Welcome to the Help a Teacher Facebook Live every Monday night. Listen, man, I am broadcasting live from the beautiful studios of the Best Western in Mineola, Texas. So I have a gig tomorrow out at Quitman, Texas, at Quitman High School, and they don't have a hotel in that town. So the next town over is Mineola, and here we are at the Best Western. All right, so before we get this thing, started, what I wanted to talk about is I posted a quote. So, every morning, I try every morning. Sometimes I forget, man. But pretty much every morning I post a quote. And one of the quotes over the weekend caused a little bit of a stir. And I thought maybe we would talk about that before we get this thing started, just because, I don't know, I like a little controversy in my life on occasion. So what it says, I was talking about creating family in the classroom and bringing a culture of connection. What the quote says is, it just about takes a felony for me to send a kid to the office because this is our family, this is our class, and we handle it in here. And you know how it is, like 99% of all the comments and the shares are positive, but I did get some messages and emails and a couple of comments. People curious, mostly based around this theme of, what do you mean you handle it in there? Don't you want your kids to experience real world consequences? And of course we want that. That's what happens. But what I'm saying is that we handle it in the family, in the classroom, rather than giving that away to somebody outside of our classroom. Because here's what I've learned, man. I've learned over the course of my, quarter century teaching is that as soon as I give up that role that I have in my classroom and that leading member of the family. And I'm not saying it's like a dictatorship or some authority figure, but more like there is some parental unit in that feel of that classroom. And I want that to be me rather than somebody else. Because as soon as I send a kid out, that breaks up the family. It's as if, it's for me, in the way I think about it, for me, sending a kid to the office is just like my own house. If we have, you got a couple of parents, a few kids. If some kid does something dumb because they're kids and they do dumb stuff, that's why they're kids. And if they get in trouble for something, if I call the guy down the street and says, "Hey, man, guess what my kid did?" and he comes over, doesn't knock, but just comes through the door of my house, screams at my kid, intimidates the other kids, takes him out, takes him down the street. Comes back in an hour and I say, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I got grounded." Well, that's not me handling it, man. It's somebody else handling that situation. And that disrupts the whole family, and that can't happen. And all right, I didn't think I was going to do this, but let me do this. We have some awesome guests about to join us, but I got to tell this quick story. I'm going to tell you about the last time I've ever sent a kid to the office. All right, so here's what happened: I was teaching at high school. It was a science class. I was teaching biology class, and we were doing a project. All the kids were assigned a project based on the systems of the body. And it was a typical, do the PowerPoint thing. And, you have a poster board and the whole thing. All right. So all the kids turn in their project. And this one kid turns in this amazing project. And I know right away, this ain't his project. There's no way this kid did this work. First of all, because he hasn't done anything. So I know for sure he didn't do this. And it's not his handwriting. It's beautiful. This whole poster board thing. And I collect all the projects, and a kid comes up, another kid says, "Hey, that project right here, that's his project." And I'm like, "Hey, man, I don't know. Let's give him a chance." He goes, "No, I'm telling you, that's not his project." And I said, "How do you know?" It's because it's my project. Because that's mine. I stole it. And so I'm looking at the thing, and I can see this kid put a mailing label over the other kid's name at the bottom, right? And I can see through the label and see the other kid's name. So I call him up. I said, "Man, this is your project." He says, "Yeah, it is." I said, "No, dude, I can see through the label." He goes, "Oh, okay." So I took him in the hallway, having conversation about trust and stealing the kid's project and honesty. And I said, "Man, this also starts with an apology. We get the victim out there. He apologizes. They shake hands. The whole thing." I've taken him back in the classroom. And listen, there's going to be consequences. We just haven't got there yet. And a couple hours later, I get a phone call from the victim's mom, the kid who got his project stolen, and his mom is crazy mad, and she's yelling on the phone, and she wants me to contact the authorities. I'm like, "Hey, mama, relax. He stole the project. Let me handle it." And she wants the principal, and I said, "Okay, all right." So I got to cover myself, right? So I write up the kid who stole the project, the perpetrator, And I sent it to the AP's office, right? I wrote up the whole story, and I get it back in my box. And this is exactly the quote I remember to this day. Here's what it says. It says, I counseled the kid. He says he didn't do it. Of course he said he didn't do it. That's what kids do, man. And so I'm back in a class. I'm like, hey, man, go down there. This kid's mom is calling me. I don't want to have to deal with her. Just go admit that you did it. So he goes down. All right, so he gets 3 days suspension, in-school suspension, and he gets a 0 on the project. Those are his consequences. All right, now listen. Now, the only reason I did that was to cover myself. Like, I had to write the kid up, right? But you think about who this was good for. Like, this was for anybody, because first of all, like, it's not good for me because this kid's in school suspension for 3 days. He's not in my class, and I got to work to get this kid caught up. And even more than that, he's not going to do he's getting a 0 on the project. Now he's not going to do the project that he needs to do so I can get this content into that kid's noggin. The kid that was victimized, he doesn't care. He's over it. Like, he made 100 on his project. What does he care? The only person that feel, and the mom's not even happy because it's not, severe enough. And here's what I know. I know this, like, consequences alone, that doesn't teach. It's consequences along with the conversation. The kids don't remember the consequences. They remember the conversation. So for me, I handle that in my classroom because every time I give that power away to someone else, it lets everybody know this isn't really our family. There's some other dictator on campus that's running this program, and it's not us. All right, so there's that. Now listen, I know that all that is way easier said than done for sure, and it is hard, man. Like that, like I really want to be in charge of everything I can in my classroom, 100% of it. And here's why: is because if I'm in charge of it, I can change it, I can affect it, and it stresses me out when I'm not in. I want it all to be my fault. And people get a little bit nervous about that. Like when I say I want 100% of everything to be my fault, like, because when it's good, it's 100% because I was good. But when it's bad, I really want to own the fact it's 100% because I was bad. Because if I accept all of it and I own every bit of it, then I can change every bit of it. And I want to be in control of everything possibly can. Now, so what about my gig is I get to find indoctrination. I was bumping around on Instagram, and I came across there's some Instagram accounts that really make a difference in people's lives. Some are just are cutesy, which is cool too, but some really are significant and they matter. And I came across Nita first, and her Instagram, I want to say, is LoveTeachBless. I hope I got that right. If not, correct. And when I came across that, I started reading through, and then I was like snooping around and see she's connected to this other guy, the bearded school counselor. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I think they're together. And then I get them on the podcast, and they're just so super cool and really making a difference in the lives of the kids. So I want to introduce you to them because I want you to get to know them just like I know them. And as soon as I get them pulled up here, where did they go? All right. Here we go. Where are they? Technology, baby.
We're here.
Yeah. I know you're there, but I got to on the screen.
Oh.
Hang on.
Okay, we're on.
I think we're on.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see yourself on the screen?
I can, yes. On Facebook.
I can't even see you on the screen, but you can say, hey, can you see me on the screen? Are we both on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I love about you guys is you have a deep passion for kids, and I love that. But also, it seems to me like you are just equally passionate about taking care of teachers as much as kids.
Yeah,
yes,
we are definitely. We truly believe that, like, self-care, and I know it's a word that's thrown around a lot now because it's like, okay, it's like a self-care kind of frenzy, but we really, 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 really believe that taking care of yourself is number one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we always talk about. Like, if we're not taking care of ourselves, it's really, really hard to take care of the kids in our classroom.
That's right.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, and for you, like in the work that you do and the experience that you have with your kids, what is it for you? What is it that you notice that those teachers that are really doing a good job taking care of themselves? What are some of the habits that you see them displaying?
Do you want to go first, Nita?
Oh, ladies first.
Okay. So for me, and I'm an instructional coach, so I was in the classroom for 13 years. And I told Hal before when we were talking that I didn't have a really good sense of self-care while I was in the classroom. I think that's why I push it so hard now. And so the habits that I see as far as the teachers that are really doing a good job at self-care is that a lot of times they're leaving work at work. And they may bring their bag home, but the bag never comes out of the car. And I'm like, yes. I mean, and then we talk about it all the time. Like if we were on break, and a few emails got sent, when we were on fall break, and the teachers were like, they were like, oh, I didn't have a chance to check those emails. I said, because you weren't supposed to. You were on fall break,
Yeah.
So they don't check their emails when they're on break. They really are. When they have a break, they take the break. And that's some of the things. What are some other things for your teachers?
Another thing that I noticed is they do not allow themselves to get bogged down with the walnut trees. I think those of you who are familiar with that or know what a walnut tree is. They don't allow themselves to get caught up in identifying all the negative all the time. They don't allow themselves to be sidetracked. Let's say in the teacher lounge, talking about how terrible the new requirements are for testing or how terrible a child's behavior was in their classroom. Mm-hmm. They're constantly seeking out ways to affect positive change. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that can be, somewhat of a burnout, but just allowing yourself not to be bogged down with those walnut trees is extremely important. So that's one thing that I definitely noticed. And even if it is a teacher that is, maybe not hanging out with their team so much, their grade level, they find someone else in the building that they can hang around and pick up positivity from, mm-hmm. especially when they're feeling burnt out or worn out.
And those are called the marigolds.
Yeah.
The marigolds. So
they've identified the marigolds in the building.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? What's interesting in every other, I think we talked about this last week, but every other profession, what they tell you is like you have to find those 5 people, and you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with, which is amazing, and like I love that. But like we can't really do that alone in our business because. Right. If we're just hanging out with those positive people, those other teachers that are struggling for whatever reason, they're still with kids. And mm-hmm. they're still impacting negatively in the lives of kids. So what I always tell people is like, get your circle together for sure. Go get your 5, but then mm-hmm. invest in yourselves, and then you go out and impact the rest.
Right. You try to be the marigold for someone else. You kind of pay it forward, so to speak.
And I think that can be that. What you're saying, Hal, is so important too. Because like in my job as an instructional coach, I work with all teachers, and so sometimes, you do find a teacher that may have been burnt out, and then finding the reason where they got to that point. I think that's very important because you're right. They are with kids every day. I mean, they're in classrooms with kids every day. And if you have a burnout teacher, we have to figure out why they're burnt out. And I think in both our professions, it calls for that. For me being a coach, him being a school counselor, it calls for us to find out where this burnout happened and how can we get you out of it, because it ultimately is about the kids in the classroom too.
I think for just admitting it, I think this like it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. At some point there are hard days.
Yeah.
Like this is a really emotional gig, and to say that you're on your game every day,
it's
not.
Yeah.
No. But I think, what I have found in the schools in which I work where things are really good, what it is, it's because so many people show up on campus giving to everyone else. And their attitude is, I want to have a bad day. But if collectively we're all giving to each other each and every day, that's going to help me when I'm having those bad days.
That's right. Right. And not staying in an island by yourself. Like that, that's another thing. Like collaboration isn't just, when I say collaboration, it's not just, we're going to lesson plan together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Collaboration is that we're all in it to win it, and we're all there for each other, and you have that sense of family. And sometimes families argue. Sometimes families they you know, you want to be like, okay, I don't want to be in this family anymore. But you stick together, and the bottom line, you're still family. And so if you look at it that way, then you're like, okay, my family member over here is struggling. How can we help them?
Yeah. Hey, I'm asking. Let me ask for you. Can you think of a time where you felt like you were just emotionally struggling, and someone came by and helped you?
Talking about me or Mike?
You.
Lots of times, yeah.
Yeah.
So I always talk about this time when I was teaching second grade in Virginia. And in that class, I swear I had tons of kids that were undiagnosed with ADHD, right? And it's so funny because when I did my student teaching, I did my student teaching in a brain research school, right? And so in the brain research, you know, you talk about how, you know, live plants are important for the brain. Running water is important for the brain, like, you know, when you're teaching kids, not having a whole bunch of colors up. But it's like as soon as I got out of that brain research school, I put all the colors up, all the patterns, things from the walls. And so I was like, I just want all the rainbow. So like in my class, it was off the chain colorful. But I had a lot of children in my classroom at the time, I didn't realize it, that were struggling with the setup of my classroom, right? I didn't know it. I was just like, my class is off the chain. And so literally, and I don't know if I talked about this on your podcast, I was looking, because I was outside of DC, I was looking for government jobs. Like I was like, okay, I'm about to be a GS-10 up in this piece. I'm done with teaching. Like I was like, I'm done. And so we had a behavior specialist come to my classroom, and I swear she was my Marigold, but she was also very real. And so when she came in and she was like, yeah, I see what the problem is. You know, she was like, your kids are going crazy because you have this setup of your classroom is making their brain they already struggle probably with ADHD. And you're like telling them it's party time. It's party time in my classroom. I had them in collaborative groups. I mean, they were like, yeah, it's party time. And so her realness, and I know sometimes it's hard to take constructive criticism, but her realness really helped me. And she helped me to set my room up in a way that was helpful to me. And I know it doesn't sound like, oh, it was all like sugar pies and, you know, candy dishes, but she came in and she was real. I mean, she was just real with me and helping me. And sometimes I think just having someone be real with you about what's kind of going on that you can't see, like outside of your realm, you know, it's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, you know, the reason I ask you is because, like, here we are, you guys do workshops and do all the self-care. Like, still, yeah, struggle.
Yeah.
Right.
It's still,
yeah,
like, that part never, I don't think. And Mike, what comes to mind are, you know, sometimes, and I've been victim of, I mean, I've done this too, where I've just been so angry. And first of all, like, just that emotion alone, I have to remind myself the reason I was angry is because I love these kids and I care so deeply. Like if I didn't care, I wouldn't be angry.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many kids come to your office where, you know, the why behind the behavior was never addressed?
Frequently. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times, you know, that behavior is always a symptom of a deeper problem that's going on. So a lot of times the kids, they're not able to verbally express. They can't say, oh, well, I'm mad because last night mom and dad got into an argument. Cops came over. I couldn't sleep. Dad went out in handcuffs. Mom is still upset and angry and crying this morning, but I have to go to school because I have a test today, a test to take.
Yeah.
So they don't tell the teacher that. I get that information. And then by the time I go around and try to explain to the teacher, I mean, you know, trying to explain some things that can further assist or help them modify the problem. There's, oh my gosh, I wish they just would have told me. Well, he's 8. He's not going to tell you that while you're fussing at him for, you know, falling asleep during the test because he didn't really sleep last night. So that happens a lot. And it is really unfortunate, but it's just, and I see both ends because I do see the teachers being frustrated because there are a lot of responsibilities. It's like, it seems like every year the responsibilities for teachers increases. And sometimes the pay does not, unfortunately. So they have all that to deal with, plus their own personal things. And then the students that come in. So I understand it is difficult at times to be able to navigate that. So I try to be much more understanding when there are instances such as that. But to answer your question, there are a lot of times that students come in and are experiencing a lot of home distress, and that bleeds over into the school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, you know, one of the comments here, sometimes I still post and sometimes I'll block it from posting because I don't know for sure if this person wanted their name out. But they had a question about what can they do? They have a brand new principal and possibly a first year principal. And the question is, how do they handle things appropriately when there's no other option left and you got to get the kid out? The kid needs to go to the office. And for me, I think that is the responsibility of a principal is to getting together with their staff and say, hey, listen, when you send me a kid, let me know how I can best support you.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because, well, one, the whole point is, and I think sometimes even when I was in the classroom, I'd be like, gosh, he just left me and he just came back. Right. And I'd be really frustrated with that. But I think the whole point is the vice principal or the principal administration is to help get to the root of the problem, calm the kid down, and give the teacher some space, deal with the discipline, but kind of bring them back into the fold, into the family, like you were saying earlier. The whole point is that the child can be brought back into the fold and be able to function and learn. But I think it is hard with new administration and them not kind of having that conversation from the beginning of how can I best support you in your classroom. And the hard part is that it might look different for different teachers.
Right.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah. Like when I said, listen, I really want to be the disciplinarian. I want to be the authority figure. I want to be the leader of the family. I want to be able to handle the consequences. If I have a kid that needs to go out, it is disrupting in that moment, but yet I want to be the one who handles consequences. But I know lots of teachers that that's all they want. They want that kid out and they want consequences out right now. They want to see the kid suffer and get them out of that whole thing.
Exactly.
So those are those are worlds apart.
And then, it's funny because I've seen a situation too where the kid has gotten, kicked out of class. The teacher's like, I'm done. Right. And then I'm, me being the coach, I kind of see the whole gamut. And then I see the kid sleeping. And I'm like, in the office, I'm like, so what happened? Like, how the kid go from nutting up in the classroom to all of a sudden we're falling asleep in the office.
Right. Taking a nap.
And so, you find out, well, he didn't have a good night's sleep last night. Or, there's some things I can't really tell you that happened, but the child needs to actually sleep.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which caused the child to start nutting up in the classroom. And because you have like 20 however kids in the classroom, while we'd like to think that we'd always be like on it as far as finding the deeper issue. I think sometimes, like you were saying, like teachers have so much on their plate that they're like trying to make sure they're hitting the standards and they're doing this and they're doing that and they're. But if they just realize, and this is how I really feel this way, if you don't get to the bottom of that issue,
it's going to be enough.
All that, the standards and the learning and all of that, the child can't even get there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's, it's good to have those deep conversations as a staff. I think it's important.
Hey, one thing I always ask, in my work around and traveling around and being in different schools, there are so many younger teachers. The average age of teaching is just getting lower and lower and lower every year.
Yeah.
And for those teachers that are really still new in the career, and I know we focus on first year teachers, but man, it took me. I was like a 3-time first year teacher. Like I did the same thing 3 times. So really a 3rd year teacher. I was a 3rd-time first year teacher. Like that, where in terms of taking care of yourself and trying to remain emotionally happy and in a good place, what would be something each of you might recommend for that younger teacher?
Give yourself grace. The thing of it is I think we're hard on ourselves in the education field, and sometimes we will mess up. sometimes we'll miss the mark. But just giving yourself grace and knowing, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. Another thing is apologies go a long way. And the thing is that respect goes both ways. I really feel this way between me and my students. So it's one of those things where if I know I messed up, I go to that kid and I say, you know what? I messed up and I apologize. Now, you shouldn't have done X. Like, I'm very clear about that. But me as the adult, I should have handled that situation differently. And it's amazing. Like, kids are like, you're apologizing to me?
Right.
You know, and I think it's just important that kids know that respect goes both ways.
And adults don't always get it right.
Right.
There are many instances where teachers, adults, period, we get it wrong. But rarely do we go back and say, you know, I messed up. I'm sorry. I probably should have done it this way. Or just have that conversation with the student, because that might be the first time any adults ever apologize to them. Because they may not get that at home. Oftentimes, many of them at times don't get that. They just get, you know, this is what it is. Yeah, so what if I messed up? I'm the adult. You're going to do as I say, not as I do, type of thing.
Right.
To go along with giving yourself grace, I would also say, be yourself. Like, stop trying to fit into a box. That's always been my biggest issue, because when you think of teachers and when you think of counselors, people usually always think of that image where teachers wearing like glasses, you know, a turtleneck, or counselors wearing penny loafers and corduroys. You can be who you are. You don't have to, quote unquote, look like a teacher. That's been the main thing. Now, I'm not saying go out there and dye your hair, you know, weird colors or anything like that, or something that within the means of your, you know, dress code and everything at your school and your county. Yeah. But be who you are as a person. Be genuine. Be authentic. I think that's extremely important, because when you're so worried about trying to check off the box for this, check off the box for that, you lose yourself. And the kids never get to know you. And a lot of times the biggest connections are where the kids get to know who you are as a person, and they connect with that, not with all the standards and everything, but they connect with you, who you are.
You know, I had that conversation with a high school teacher, and was a gentleman. He decided to set up a bulletin board. First of all, the fact he had a blank bulletin board, you know, was a problem. But and I said, brother, why don't you set up one dedicated just to you? Fill up that entire 3x3 square of everything you can come up with all about you. And he sent me a picture the next day. These kids were just huddled around it, like, you know, deep, trying to get to it, and looking at all of his pictures from his childhood. And when he played, I didn't know you played football.
Right.
And there was and then the vibe of the class completely changed in that moment. Yeah. It transformed the class, that one little bulletin board.
Yeah. It is so huge, and that builds relationships.
Instantaneously. And it just happens automatically.
Yeah. It's so funny. And you can do that in different ways. Like, it doesn't always have to be like we're sitting down having a morning meeting. Like, it's funny because I was doing a good lesson in teaching writing. And I know sometimes I'm not, you know, I love TPT to look like the next person, but I know sometimes we like to just, you know, get like, let's say an essay that's already done. But one thing I suggested, you know, for the teachers is that if you're writing, you know, a narrative or a personal narrative, write about yourself. Like, you know, so there's things that you can get, that you can connect and build relationships, and they can get to know you through like the work that you do every day. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a, you know, like a one-on-one conversation.
Right. And so I had to explain to him, I said, hey, brother, it wasn't the bulletin board. It was the fact that they know you now. Like, this is kids. They have to know who you are.
Yes.
To do what you say.
Yes.
And if I, you know, and really that level of relationship and that level of family is always in direct proportion to how effective my teaching is in the classroom. And it happens. You know, I mean, if I can become self-aware and get out of the emotion of it all and think, okay, why are we struggling in here? And it's really because again, I'm going to own it all. It's 100% because of me that I have let our family and our relationship slide. That's take a second place, a second back seat to the content. And let me get back to the relationship. So that is equally important as the content. And when I do that, it kind of fits back together in place.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
let me ask you this one last question, and that is, if you, I always love asking this, if you could go back in time and think about your first few years teaching, if you could do one thing different, both of you, if you could go back in time, your first few years in school working, if you could do something different, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
So the first 3 years teaching, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I made so many mistakes. I'm trying to think about
That would be my answer. It'd be like everything. That's what I would change.
Yeah, I think it would just, for me, it would be connecting with the parents more, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
I think that I was really scared to make a mistake. I think I was nervous to connect with parents, and I allowed the fact that I was so nervous in my first couple of years kind of steer me away from that. Like it would always be just a have to, like I knew I had to do back to school night. So that was something that like was high anxiety for me. And so I think the connection with the parents more, would have made my years easier, the first few years easier for me to build those relationships with the parents, the at-home connection. Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, my story is a little unique because I still am a licensed therapist, but went ahead and got my credentials as a school counselor as well. So I think if I go all the way back to graduate school, when I took that fork in the road after I finished my first year, I probably would have went directly into school counseling instead of community counseling. I really think I would have done that. I would have been, well, you know what? I'm thinking through it, I don't have too many. I know you're looking at me like, babe, spit it out.
No. I was, you know what? No, it wasn't. I was thinking that I think that is what makes you such a great counselor.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because now thinking back on it, I recant that statement totally. I am glad that I did it the way that I did because, see, when I look up, that means I'm trying to access the answer. I think it allowed me to have a greater experience and a greater appreciation for working with challenging students. Because for me now, because I have worked at Department of Family and Children's Services, I worked in community counseling. I've worked with the Department of Juvenile Justice. So I've worked in a residential treatment facility, hospital. So I've been in all the settings you can possibly think of, and now going into the schools, it makes crisis situations, kind of easy for me. Not to make it sound like it's a walk in the park, but with the experience that I have, I'm confident that I know what I'm doing in that situation and what's probably going to best help that student. So I would actually say
he's perfect. Like everything is.
No,
I'm just joking.
Nope, not at all.
No, I'm just joking.
But if I'm thinking about counseling, I would have definitely taken my advice as far as being who I am more authentic. Because when I first started out as a counselor, as well as a therapist, licensed therapist, I was sitting there trying to think of while my clients were telling me the problems that they were having, I was really inside my own head trying to think of what I was going to say back to them that was going to help, that was going to be profound. Like I wanted to be the guys to have them have the aha moment. Like they had an aha moment because they sat down and talked to Mr. Creekmore. No, and then as I, got used to being a therapist and got used to being in that role, I started to say, hey, that's pretty tough. I don't even know how I would handle that. And sometimes that is, enough because you're being real. Like, I don't know how I would handle that, but I'm sure together we can try to figure something out that's going to be the most, productive or the best way to go about that situation. So I think for me, just trying to not be who I thought a therapist should be, if that makes any sense, and just being comfortable with who I was as a therapist. That makes sense.
And that's back to being authentic. I think that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
I was wondering, watching, and Rhonda, she was commenting, and I was reading Rhonda's comment, and she was talking about how my students know that I love and care for them. And I think for me, going back, if I could do anything different, I think I would have make sure I more clearly communicated, like said the words.
Yeah.
Like I care about you, because I think sometimes we think, well, my kids know that I'm up here all day. They see my car,
right.
They see my car early in the morning. They see my car late at night. They must know. No, they don't know. Like, you have to say the words.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
To the heart, and I think it was help me learn those lessons more than anything else.
Because kids actually think that surprisingly, they actually think when they see your car there first thing in the morning and see it when they're leaving, they think that being a teacher is just a great old job. You're not there because of them. You're there because you're having so much fun all the time, not realizing the stress that you're under on a daily basis. So you're right. They definitely do need to hear it.
They do. I agree. 110%.
Hey, man, listen, I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I really appreciate you. What I was going to ask is, do you guys have any upcoming teacher self-care events, anything like that going on?
Actually, yeah, we have. There's a free online teacher self-care conference. It's completely free. And some of the presenters from the teacher self-care conference are going to be on there, telling their stories for self-care and tips for self-care. And I think it's going all the way to November. No, it's on November 1st, but it's all, you can go and register between now and November 1st.
Okay. Yep.
Awesome. And then, so they can find you. I know you guys mostly do the Instagram thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, at LoveTeachBless, and I believe, Mike, you are bearded.school.counselor. Is that right?
There we go. Yes,
right.
That's it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, that was fun, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Great time.